All right, so when we talk to people who do not live in the area, we tell them we live in Seattle.
Liar.
Yeah, we do not live in Seattle at all. We actually, if you're talking to people who are local, we tell them we live on the east side.
Yep.
Okay, so what is the east side? You know what? Let's flash a map. What cities are in the east side?
Okay, well, I'll even take a step back further from that. So if you think you're coming to Seattle for the first time, you see the Space Needle downtown, you see all these big buildings, and then there's a big lake in the middle. Not like Lake Michigan, but it's still big for people around here. And the lake in the middle is called Lake Washington.
Yes.
And if you go on the other side of the lake, which is the east side of the lake, Seattle's on the west side of the lake. If you're on the east side of the lake, there's a whole bunch of cities, right?
Yep.
That includes Bellevue, like where Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, all the richest people in the world live there. And where we live in Kirkland, not where all the richest people in the world live. And then there's a whole bunch of other cities kind of sprinkled in. There's Woodinville, which is wine country.
Where all the wineries are.
Molly has lived there.
I should have a second home there.
And then there's another city called Bothell, another city called Sammamish, which is known as the safest city around here because it's a little bit further out. There's none of the kind of the issues you might face in Seattle that you see on the news and that type of thing. But again, there's the big lake in the middle. On the east side, so we're talking about east side of that lake, is all these little cities. And what has happened over the years is that all the big companies who wanted to be in Seattle, they wanted to be in the big towers, have not only office space on the Seattle side, on the west side, and on the east side, they have space everywhere. So
yeah, so if you actually, an interesting story is my sister came to visit with her family a couple months ago. As we were driving back from the airport, she's like, "Oh, is that Seattle?" Because she saw all these huge buildings, and I was like, "Nope, that's Bellevue." So Bellevue actually looks like a very large city, and that's because we have so many big tech companies here. So what companies are over on the east side? We've got Microsoft, probably the most notable.
Google. Apple's all over the place.
Amazon.
Meta, or Facebook, sorry.
Facebook. Yep. So we've got these big tech companies that, like Jason said, do have offices down in Seattle, but many of them have moved to the east side and are located in Bellevue.
And so a big reason why, it's funny, if you're watching this and you live in Seattle or a neighborhood in Seattle, you might say, well, I would never live on the east side. And if you grew up on the east side in, Bill Gates land, you might say, well, I never really considered living in Seattle. But a lot of what happens is if, let's say you have a family, and you're living in Seattle, let's say you're single, and we got engaged.
Okay.
We're living in Seattle, we're living in a condo or an apartment, and we have our first kid, and all of a sudden we're starting to think about schools. So schools in Seattle, I'm not saying that they're bad by any means, but what most people do is they feel more comfortable sending their kids to private school.
If you live in Seattle.
If you live on the Seattle side. But if you live on the east side, I don't know why I did that.
The public schools on the east side are rated
really good. So
very high.
And some are better than the others, but you really just don't have to worry about having to pay extra money for private schools because the public schools are so good. So what happens to, again, a lot of people is as their kids age into grade school or whatever it might be, they migrate over to
over to the east side. And the east side is something I would consider as like suburbia of the big city.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like you were saying with your sister seeing all these big towers in Bellevue. Bellevue has got, I think, I don't have the stats in front of me, is just as expensive to live as in Manhattan. So yeah. Bellevue really is our Manhattan. There's office space for all the big tech companies and all the companies around here. But it's just, the schools are just great.
Yeah, so we're talking about kind of like two different areas, right? Seattle versus the east side. As far as distance goes, it's not that far. So Kirkland, where we are, to Seattle is about 12 miles. So it's
max.
Really close. Yeah, max. 12 miles. It's close, but our traffic is also really bad. So if you're driving from Kirkland into Seattle for work every morning during the morning rush hour, it could take you an hour and a half to get there.
So, and I've lived in Seattle when I went to the University of Washington, but I've lived on the east side almost my entire life. It's where I bought our houses, my first car. My wife lives on the east side.
Well,
I had my first kiss. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that wasn't me.
But so the east side just has so many things to offer.
What is your favorite thing about living on the east side?
I don't know. Like, I'm such a suburban dad.
Yeah.
I just love the fact that, like, it's very safe. The schools are great. I wouldn't say things are as walkable as in Seattle, but, the beaches, the parks, it's just really comfortable. I don't know. It's really comfortable and safe. What about you?
I'm just not a city gal. So I love the suburban life. I like being able to drive my car to the grocery store, park it easily in a parking space. Seattle neighborhoods, the parking can be kind of
trickier.
A little tricky because it's street parking, and so you're parallel parking.
Well, you think about even that. You're talking about that. Our son Ty is training at an ice cream shop in Seattle today.
Yes.
He's going to be working on the east side, but he's training in Seattle.
Yeah.
And he was a half hour late yesterday because he couldn't find parking.
Couldn't find parking.
You know, and again, like his ice cream shop where he's going to be working in Kirkland, right near our office, he'll find parking in 30 seconds and will never be late to work. But Seattle still is great. So if you're a city person and you like that vibe, and you know, you're less concerned about schools or you've got friends that live there, it's a great.
There's great little pockets which have really cool neighborhoods and areas with restaurants and bars and all that kind of stuff. But we're just East Siders.
Gosh, we are such East Siders.